Welcome to the Business of Property podcast. I'm Simon.
I'm Stuart.
And I'm Jamie.
We're all property people running our own businesses. This podcast is just us chatting, as we often do, about anything and everything property. So I'm delighted to say that we are joined by Jamie today, who is CEO of Inspired Villages. And I think I'm going to hand over very quickly to him and say, Jamie, what is Inspired Villages and how did it get started?
Thank you, Simon, and hello, everybody. Inspired Villages are an operator and developer of integrated retirement communities. You might think, what is an integrated retirement community? Well, it's a place where people who are over 65 can come and live their lives happily, fulfilled, and focused really around holistic well-being, which is their physical, mental, social, and financial well-being. We are nationwide in the UK. Currently have 6 operating villages, just looking after over 1,000 people, with a business plan that's driving to 34 villages to look after over 12,500 people in the next 10 years. And we have a mix of independent and assisted living centred around a core building that has our restaurants, cafes, bars, swimming pools, fitness studios and the like. Generally, each of our communities have 35 people working for us at them, and they provide services to people as and when they need them. So it's anything from home help, gardening and the like, through to sort of regulated care through a third-party domiciliary care agency.
Yeah, thanks for that. And we were having a brief chat before we hit the record button, and you started this with a couple of other people. Can you just talk a little bit about when that happened and, from your perspective, why? What took you towards Inspired Villages?
Okay, so I've had a number of businesses in my time within development and construction. I started out in construction, where I started and owned a series of construction companies. Through the evolution of time and opportunity, I sort of came into retail development, where I was involved with the business doing town centre, city centre regen up until sort of 2007, 2008, when the crash happened, and found ourselves looking for opportunities. So in that time, I was looking around the country, meeting people, and came across a gentleman who just sold his business doing these things called retirement villages. It was like, well, what are they? I'd never heard of it before. This was in 2008. So went to see him and had a real light bulb moment. And the light bulb moment was that I could finally find something that was more than just a job. And I've got lots of opportunities, and I've had a number of different businesses over the time. But this is one that became something that felt purposeful, and something that actually meant that I could do something with my energy and ambition that would transform an area of society that's largely ignored. When people think about retirement, their vision is really not that good generally. It's generally sort of an awful place with people in a circle looking at each other and sleeping half the time. Yet there's an opportunity for people to live their best years. And I felt that was a real light bulb moment. And ironically, the sort of financial part of it is very similar to other sectors, where you have tenants, you have our residents who all have leasehold or rental agreements. The success is to have a very sharp back of house function, but a great front of house that would enable people to sit and dwell and come back and be proud of where they're living. So you look at that, so it's sort of like a hotel services for people to spend 7-10 years in, not just 1 to 2 days. And it was an amazing moment. I can remember the day, even now, where I came away from that meeting thinking, I have to get into this space. I have to do that. And I went back to my long-term business partner and said, right, I don't know how we're going to make this work, but we're going to make it work. And we did. We then optioned some sites. We started bringing some product through. We started to evolve our business. And then in 2014, we managed to secure investment through a company called Places for People, who committed equity to us to deliver 2 of our villages, one in Warwickshire, one in Cheshire. And in 2017, we could step to the next stage, where I secured investment through Legal & General, through their Legal & General Capital business, who then saw the opportunity here with the ageing demographic. At the moment, there's just over 12 million people in the UK over 65. That's due to raise to just under 20 million in the next sort of 10 years. The number of over 80s is doubling. And what suitable accommodation is there for that demographic with, £1 trillion of equity? These people have done well out of property and done well out of, their working careers generally. So you saw an opportunity there that was a wonderful one to sort of deal with your passion in a working sense. And how cool is that to sort of be getting up every day and not thinking this is a job and transforming people's lives. And we sort of moved that business forward as a very purpose-led organisation from none of us and a dream and an empty suitcase, right the way around now to just over 300 people in the business. In August 2021, we secured a co-investment from NatWest Group Pensions, who've committed equal equity to L&G, which was $250 million each. So that gave us $500 million in equity with associated debt. Allows us to drive to the 34 village platform that we are now pushing hard to deliver.
I think that sounds like a fantastic story, especially discovering something you feel so passionate about and so driven to solve. I think that's got to be the dream, really, hasn't it, of every entrepreneur to find that thing that, as you say, doesn't feel like a job every day when you get up. I'm interested in sort of some of the practicalities of your villages. You mentioned that they're built around a central building, and that your tenants or your customers tend to have leaseholds. So what is actually in the central building, and what comes around it? Does it tend to be houses or flats, and do people have their own gardens, or how do they actually look? In my head, I'm sort of imagining a Centre Parks type thing, because they have a thing in the middle and stuff around it. Because I've never been to a retirement village. I'm not quite that old yet. So yeah.
Well, you should come. You should come in here. They're as are not gated. You should come have a bite to eat in one of our restaurants or a coffee in our cafe.
That's really interesting. Are they open to the general public as well?
Yeah, I mean, in our wellness facilities, we have local schools using them for swimming lessons and things like that. So our model is educonurbation, generally 7-10 acre sites linked to a town or a city, low rise, 3 stories maximum for us. We want to keep a very domestic scale. It's apartment living, level living is what we should say. So it's we like to think that people can get to their apartments without having to go upstairs, albeit we very much advocate the use of stairs. We're all about keeping people well. It's not about caring for you. We're not carers, we're caring as an organisation. And for us, if we can give people extra years of health, then people can actually live better for longer with very little requirement for GP visitation and the like. Our sector, has statistics that people living within our communities might spend 1 to 2 days in hospital in comparison to 2 weeks that people tend to stay in if they're living in traditional open market housing. We typically have our sort of lower work surfaces, lower kitchen tops. Our designs are very much there for people as they age. We look at, I'm very clear on 5 things for me. It's lead with purpose or lead with passion now. I'm trying to move it to my purpose is my passion now. So that's exactly where it is. But also keep it simple. You'll know in property in particular, we're very, very good at complicating things. Just keep it simple. Have a strong eye for detail. That's exactly what it's all about, those little things. There's no point in planting a bush underneath a window that grows quickly. You want it to grow well. You've got to think about that layout of how it is. And think of how somebody moves around a bit at home. And say for us, our average age is 79. The range is between 65 and 106 now. So a huge age range. So you've got a proper community within the community. And if those people do need to stay in bed for a particular reason for a period of time, they're not in a lot. We want to make sure that the window is in a place that you can see out of when you're in your bed and not necessarily have to crank yourself left and right. So we try and think of that whole life for people. Our windows are slightly lower, so that people, if they're sitting down or in a wheelchair, whatever, they can actually see out of them. And it's sort of, our doors are wider, but they don't look like that. We use quality design and a strong attention to detail to make an environment something that you would live in, Simon, or you would live in, Stuart, quite happily, but there for you for your life. for your whole of your life. And to do that, we need to have empathy. We need to empathise with everyone around us, our customers, their families, our colleagues, their families, the wider network. But wrap that up with drive. As a business, we're in a nascent sector. We have investment through social impact investors. We take that very, very seriously. And in doing that, we need to drive the right decisions. We're not backed by private equity. We're backed by organisations that want to do the right thing. And that's why, NatWest invested in us, because we were heading down a net zero route well in advance of anyone else. So each of our schemes are net zero now in regulated energy, with a view of going operationally net zero well before the 2030 deadline that most people are going at. And it's interesting because things like that are like, people say, that's really tricky, it's difficult, it's loads of capex. It's like, no, just think about the building. Go to fabric first. See the layout of a building first. Think about it a little harder to build the right thing first. Embedded carbon's a challenge for us, but build it strong, build it robust, build it for the long term, and then start to use ground source or air source or other energy things and photovoltaics. So any offsetting you're doing is actually directly involved. So you might put a little wind farm or a little solar farm next to it, but connect it in through a private wire network. So you're not greenwashing, you're doing the right thing. And for that, that needs a lot of drive, doesn't it? Someone said you either lead or be led. For me, we have an opportunity to lead, and that's a really exciting thing about this.
Yeah, and obviously you've talked about purpose is passion, and your passion just comes through loud and clear. And you mentioned living in the properties. I'd have no problem living there. And for anyone listening, just head over to inspiredvillages.co.uk. Have a look yourself. I mean, I've already got my eyes on the one close to Leeds Castle, by the way. That's not far from where I am. And what I love already is, everything you've talked about purposeful. When I hear sort of intentional, everything has an intention, even if it's the windows in relation to a bed or the height of a surface. And it's really interesting. Having spoken with at least 100 entrepreneurs over the last couple of years, one thing I'm just interested to get to, when you came away from that meeting back when, and you had that idea and it clearly lit a fire inside you. You spoke to a business partner, you've got an idea, you've got your suitcase. What happened then? So how did you get the wheels turning to make what is now, clearly a large business providing a lot of what is necessary, into the country, into reality? How did you do that? Where did you start?
I've always had a mantra. The mantra is, where there's a will, I'll find a way. And where there's not, I'll find an excuse. So for me, it's first off to come away from that to think, okay, how do I get my skills and my strengths to make things happen? And then who do I need around me to help support that? Where are my weak spots? But first off is to say, I need to do this. I need to have a burning desire in order to make a change. So my core knowledge is in development and construction and property, and no knowledge in operations, which is good, because then I wasn't fettered by any sort of stigma or anything. I just, what do I think would be the right thing to do?
A good bit of naivety.
Yeah,
a bit of naivety and ignorance.
Yeah. And that naivety, and that sort of, and it's just sort of, it's just action that you think, okay, well, I can buy a bit of land. I can then see and push it through planning. I can then get it built. I can then get it into a fashion where I think I can sell it. And then you sort of look at the metrics through that, and then to explore the sort of opportunity in the widest sort of sense. Then enabled me. I was down. It was a drive back to the Midlands from Stow-on-the-Wold, and it was just that sort of 2-hour drive. At the end of it, it was like, right, let's form a business. Let's get some sites optioned. Let's get some movement in this. Let's get the best people who are designing this space, and let's challenge the status quo. Let's really push the boundaries, and let's test. And then with that, you start to sort of engage directly, don't you? You start to sort of feel it yourself. And I think for me, as I've evolved the business, I'm doing a presentation about an initiative I'm trying to think of at the moment that's very much linked to this, to the WI in the village I live in. Because I want to hear it myself. And I'm here seeing residents today because I want to see what they're, where they're at here. And I think for me, coming back and sort of being able to execute a plan is the process. But you don't want to get the process to get in the way of the sort of vision, your dream, your drive, and push it. And then don't just accept, it's sort of, I think people like me, I'm not sure whether we're ignorant or not, to be honest, because no matter what happens in a day, no matter how bad it is, the next day I'll always get up and start again. You only fail when you give in. Don't give in. Have that will, go for it. And I think to anyone out there that wants to get into any sort of industry, anything at all, if you've got the drive, if you've got the determination, just go for it. Just do it. Because actually it's amazing that people will latch onto that. And then there's people cleverer than me, people much more cleverer than me in our business. And those people can sort of take this sort of like energy and transform it into reality, and then and that's where we're at with our business now. I've got a fabulous senior management team who are exceptionally good. I've got a really strong grown-up governance structure within the business that the likes of Legal and General and the age that they are and NatWest Group Pensions are just liking and forming and the like. And yet, we're only formed in 2017. So then we look at, you look at who does it well out there. So like the challenger banks and people like that, they can open bank accounts like that, can't they? And I'm thinking, well, how do we sell property? Do we make it really complicated? So why don't we try and look at the amount of interactions we have with a customer and get that down to 10% of that? It's, and because we're a new company, and I think this is the exciting thing about when you do start a business is all the legacy, all the process and the procedures. And if anyone ever complains in our company here now and say, God, it's complicated, I'm thinking, well, we made it up. So we made our own complicated. So you think to yourself, well, I've only got myself to blame for this complicated, bro. So and I think that's the interesting thing with it, Stuart, if that answers the question.
I think that's a brilliant outlook to have, and to have that drive. I'm curious about your early net zero adoptership. And obviously there was presumably some personal drive behind that to be such an early adopter. So where did that come from, and how did you get started on that path?
Okay, I think COVID's changed a lot of people. So the reason why people are talking about, I know COP26 and all those other things happened there, but I think the pandemic has really got people to have a sort of sit down, that proverbial cup of tea in their own minds to think about, what part they play in society and life. And really, a few years ago, came to the conclusion that I think we and I do have an obligation to leave this planet in a better place than I joined it. And the way that life was going, we weren't doing that. So you think, okay, well, my business now, we're going to sort of deliver over 7 million square feet of housing. A gross development value of north of £4 billion and all this, homes for thousands of people and all that sort of stuff. So you think, that sounds quite grown up, doesn't it? It sounds quite responsible, this sort of thing. So you think, well, why don't we just try and do it properly? And why don't we just try and sort of pledge ourselves to go net zero? Legal and General Capital are leading the way. So Legal and General are very keen on ESG. In fact, they've actually added an H to the ESG, which I quite like. So they're saying health forms part of it. So environmental, social, and health and governance.
Makes sense.
It doesn't roll off the tongue, unfortunately, but it means a lot, doesn't it? So you think to yourself, well, I love the idea that what we do and what the likes of you do, as well as the likes of I do, can create the benchmark for lots of things to happen. And it'd be so cool if in like 10, 15 years' time to look back and know we're all driving down this way and I've had a little part to play in that. That just is so rewarding. And so when you look at it and you think, all it needs is a bit of effort and a bit of focus and a bit of drive. And actually it needs people like us, who are going to think our stuff in. How difficult can it be? And everyone will throw the barriers and say, CapEx and OpEx and the world and all that sort of stuff, But the fact of the matter is, our challenges are more about, what will the effect of Russia into Ukraine? What's China going to do next? What's happening with that? So we've got these uncontrollables, but then you've got these controllables. So for us, it's like, well, let's control the best sort of building. So the people aren't necessarily, they're going to get their energy from the ground or get their energy from the air, or they're going to get their energy from the sun. And therefore they're not going to be as, exposed to Russia, or wherever. The fact is people living with us are on fixed income. They're earning a pension. They can't earn out. So a doubling of their utility costs is a big problem for them. Big problem. So how do we ensure that we can align to that as best we can? And one of the best ways to do it is just create the energy yourself. So you're actually, you're not, as long as it's windy or sunny or whatever, you can do that. And that's probably the underwrite for me, was a bit about control what you can control. Do your best in what you can do there. And for that, ESG's got to be a good place to go.
I've got a vision of all of your leaseholders now on exercise bikes that are now pumping energy into the local villages.
Yeah, well, it is. I mean, to be fair, you laugh, but to centre around holistic well-being, physical, mental, social, financial well-being of people. It's been there time immemorial. Everyone's talked about holistic well-being for many, many years. And if you centre decisions back to that, and you make sure you're ticking at least one of those boxes, then the decisions you're doing as a business is passing the sanity tests, not just the vanity tests. And I think people, as they're forming businesses, if they're not careful, it becomes a vanity project. It becomes something that you want to show off to your mates, not making any difference, And I think the likes of ESG keeps your feet on the ground. It keeps you doing the right thing, And we're very early in the process. We're ahead of the game, but we're still early in the process, really early. I see that we're a little toddler. We were a baby, we're a little toddler. We're going through our terrible twos, but we've got a long way to go. So it's and I think that's again hopefully answered the question on ESG.
You mentioned that your new builds, you're thinking about this early and upfront and building green technologies and net zero into your buildings that you're creating. But it sounds like some of your buildings, some of your villages will predate those plans and decisions. How are you applying those net zero goals to some of your existing and older buildings? Because that's always a much harder puzzle, I think, for property people.
It is. It absolutely is. And you say, okay, do we go? How do we create ourselves? I know Google have just announced that they're going to create themselves as net zero and go backwards from formation. And we're probably going to say the same. It's easy for us. We've not been going long, sort of thing. So we can actually make some easy decisions and then make out that we're the best. That's just the way of a new company. And our business, I mean, we use air source and have on most of our properties anyway. And we've got a photovoltaic, so we're not far off net zero regulated energy on our schemes. We have got district heating, so people buy energy and not heating. Unfortunately, we have gas-fired boilers in a couple of the schemes, which we need to address. And we're looking at ways in which we can address that. So from the off, we always looked at the efficiency of the use of heating buildings anyway. That was a basic. So building fabric has always been a central piece to what we're doing. And then it's just trying to sort of work out, okay, what do we need to do? How do we need to transform that? People don't have gas in their own homes. So the gas, if it comes in, will be going to central plants so that we could flip that to something else if the technology allows us to do it. And a drive to sort of not have to do too much retrofitting. I think everyone's going to have an obligation to retrofit at some point. And for us, we are lucky, I think, because we went down in air source heating. So we're halfway there with lots. So we are using the air to energize. It was a decision. You make your luck, but that's helped us. And on the gas, because it's all district heating systems, our residents are buying energy. And we might just need to change the energy source from one to another. So I suppose it's always been a sort of a thinking part of what we're doing anyway, if not overt. It's always been trying to work out. The important thing for us as a business is aligning with the customer. And then to align with the customer, you've got to understand life through our customer's eyes. And it's the fixed income bit that's always resonated with me. You, Simon, you, Stuart, you could earn more. You could go do something else, look at another opportunity, try and get something. People in their 80s have done that. They just want to enjoy themselves, and therefore they look at their income really closely. So the worst thing we can do is not try and align to that challenge. And if we do, then we're aligned, aren't we?
Yeah, I mean, I've never heard a customer-centric model not prove successful yet. Because for all the reasons you've talked about, and they're quite obvious. And just, I guess, the final question in my mind, from a customer perspective, is how it works in operation. So they are buying that lease within the building, and then so how does that work from their point of view? So if I'm reaching that age and actually I think, yeah, do you know what, I want to put my feet up and have a good life, I'm going to go there. How does that work operationally for that?
Okay, so we have two ways that we are trying to widen that to others, because we want to be ultimately customer centric and be agnostic on somebody. So somebody might want to come and rent, somebody might want to buy, someone might want to do part of those, and we've got to get agnostic with it. We're not quite there yet. I can talk as if everyone thinks I've got the answer to every question. I haven't. I'm just a good talker at times. And what we do is people generally will buy a long leasehold interest, 250-year lease. They'll then pay a premium for that lease, buy the property in essence, and then they'll pay a service charge within the Act, but we try to cap that charge so that we can then control that in line with their expectations, so they know their outgoings are under control and into place. People then can rent. So people then can rent property under an AST, simple AST agreement, and they can then either buy that after a while of renting it, or they can just rent, or they can come and go. We don't think people... 99% of people who come wish they'd done it earlier for us. And then the interesting thing, the way that people talk about, there's something called an event fee within our model. So on the reassignment of the lease, when the property is vacated and when the one or couple have passed away, then there's a percentage of the resale value that is charged to that. So, and that's can be 18%, which sounds like a lot. But for that, we then able to control their annual costs, so we can control the service charge. We can then deliver services within the village. We can create the building form for those services within the village, and then we refurbish it. So there's no the sinking funds covered in that. So if we need to replace a roof, we'll replace it. And interestingly, everybody's accommodation, we would refurbish that to an A1 standard on resale. So when a couple move in, they have a choice to say, do you want to pay this price, or do you want to pay this price but with this event fee? And then people will say, well, okay, what's the event fee? Well, the event fee is a cost that you pay actually after you pass away. And people will say, oh, great. So they look at their own arrangements and they accept that, and they say, okay, what's that event fee doing? Is it going back to shareholders? Is that just like a profit? We say, no, that allows us to control the environment that you live in, to make it an A1 environment that's wonderful. It controls the resale of the property. So for your family, they know they're selling an A1 property. That's why we have waiting lists. That's why our properties tend to, on resale, will go up sort of HPI plus 2%. So we know that there is capital appreciation in someone's asset, and it becomes something that is a place where they can live hassle-free. And then when it comes up for resale, they know that it's being sold as an A1 property. And it's an interesting area that was tested at the Law Commission. It's something that people do talk about and people do get confused at times about. But actually, we find that when we sit down and talk to people about it and say, we've got a choice, you can either pay for it up front or you pay for it at the end, which one would you like? And 9.5 out of 10 will say, well, we'll pay for it when the lease is reassigned. Give me an A1 property. Let me live in a luxurious environment for the whole of my life, so I can just focus on having fun and jumping out of planes and running marathons, sort of thing.
It sounds really flexible and really simple, I think, for people, because you say that they can have different choices and choose how they want to structure it, and then potentially change what they're doing as well. So if you rent first and then decide to buy later, I think that's a good flexibility. I remember a recent headline I saw where there was a large percentage of current tenants wanting to buy out their landlords. So that does happen, and obviously in retirement as well.
Yeah, it does. I mean, and we've got to focus on service delivery. We have, common hold and all those other challenges that we're all facing. And my sort of response to our team is just give excellent service. Focus on doing the right thing. And you're going to make some mistakes. You're going to do it, but have the courage to be able to do the right thing. And if you focus on service, why would somebody want to do anything different than just enjoy their lives with us? That's easy to say, very difficult to operate at times because you've got humans involved. But the fact is, let's just focus on that and keep celebrating those wins and learning from the bits that you don't get so well.
That's interesting. You mentioned a difficulty there, and I was going to try and finish up with something around that. As much as you said you've got a waiting list of people wanting to buy your properties, and move into your villages. And I know from looking at your site, you've got, I think, over 5 sites that you're currently working on and building out. So presumably you have quite a lot in the pipeline as well. So what are your current challenges, and what are the things that are currently sort of attracting your drive and your attention at the moment in the business?
Okay, so we're still on a myth busting. So the sales velocity, whilst there's waiting list on completed developments, we're still not selling fast enough on our current developments. So the challenge that we have is creating a better awareness for people to create the inquiries to the visits. Because people are generally, the stigma within the sector is still what we talked about earlier, this sort of awful place that people sit around and just stare at you. And we've got to work through that stigma for people to see, because as soon as people come through our door, 38% of people who visit will reserve. So it's a real big percentage. 28% of those will complete. The odd person will then fall out between that reservation and completion. But we're still a high percentage of people. So our drive is to get people to inquire, get people to visit, because we see that people will do that. So one of our key challenges is to do that. When a village is full, and it's then selling at a sort of lower cadence because of people, it's only selling when people are vacating, then the waiting lists start to fall. It's actually on the development pipeline, it's raising that awareness. And actually then the larger challenge we have is the time it takes for planning. The planning system within the UK does not legislate for our type of use, so we're fighting against open market housing providers. We're having to educate local authorities and bring people into the space of knowing that most people will move within a few mile radius. There's a massive 46% reduction in GP visitation from people who live within our communities, so therefore we take less pressure on the NHS. We know that a person living in one of our communities could save on average £3,500 per person per year in comparison to their own home to the NHS. So we know we can save billions to the NHS as a sector. And it's actually getting those messages across, Simon. It's getting the point so people can understand what an integrated retirement community is. And I think that as it falls, I think there'll be a very steep growth in it, which hopefully will match with the same time that we'll have got planning and built a few. And that's the way that we and our investors are seeing it.
I think we need to be sort of bring this to a close, although I have lots of other questions would be really interesting to talk about, but unfortunately not today. So thank you very, very much for joining us, Jamie, and sharing your passion and your vision in this sector. I'll just finish up with asking, how can people find out more, and where would you like to sort of direct people?
Well, as Stuart very kindly said, our website has all the information. So www.inspiredvillages.co.uk is a great place to find them. If there's a request there for call, and if you actually ring and speak to somebody, you can just actually ask them. There's not, come and see what we're doing, see where we are. We have facilities open. We're still, even though the world has opened up and the pandemic has passed it by, we still have a few checks and balances we like to do when people come and visit us, because people living with us are generally older and slightly more vulnerable. But come and see us. Come and see what we do, please. Just out of interest, even if like yourself, Simon or Stuart, come and see. Come and have a bite to eat. You're more than welcome, and then you can see for yourself the sort of environments that we and others in the sector are creating, because we're making a transformational change to people's lives. We're creating a built environment that is more than just bricks and mortar. This is a lifestyle. This is a place for people to enjoy their lives, to make it the best years of their life.
I think that sounds fantastic. So I will now just say to everyone listening, please do visit inspiredvillages.co.uk to find out more, and link to that and a number of other things we've talked about in this episode will be available in the show notes at thebusinessofproperty.com. And Stuart and I will talk to you again next week.